I've been sitting here for about 20 minutes now, trying to figure out where to start. My name is Harold Eugene Mercer. I'm 73 years old, and I have a condition. That's what my doctor calls it, a condition, as if giving it a soft name makes it softer.
It doesn't. I'm not recording this because I think anyone needs to hear it. I'm recording it because I need to say it. There's a difference. And at this point in my life, that difference matters to me more than almost anything. So, here I am. I grew up in a small town in eastern Ohio, Millersport. You've never heard of it, and that's fine. Nobody has. My father worked at a parts factory. My mother cleaned houses on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We weren't poor in the way that word gets used now. We had food, we had heat most winters, but there was a kind of thinness to everything. A thinness that I decided very early on I was going to fix. I was going to be the one who made something of himself. That's what I told myself at 17, standing in the parking lot of that factory, watching my father come out with the other men, all of them moving the same way, slow, shoulders curved forward, not broken exactly, but spent. I remember thinking, I am not going to look like that, and I didn't. I'll give myself that much. I worked. Lord, did I work. Accounting degree from a state school, started at a firm in Columbus, married Patricia when I was 26. She had dark hair and she laughed at things most people didn't even notice were funny. Little things, a word someone used wrong, the way a pigeon walked. She found the world genuinely amusing, Patricia did, and I loved her for it, even when I was too busy to sit still long enough to see what she was laughing at. We had 2 children, Robert and Diane. Robert is in Seattle now. We talk on birthdays. Diane and I are fine. We're fine. That's the word we use. Fine. I want to tell you about a Tuesday in 1987. I don't know why that Tuesday specifically stayed with me all these years. There was nothing dramatic about it. No accident, no argument, no moment that announced itself as important. Robert was 9. He had this phase where he was obsessed with building models, plastic models, airplanes, ships, whatever he could get his hands on, and he'd been asking me for maybe 3 weeks to help him build this particular one, a WW-2 bomber, B-17, I think. He'd seen something on television, and he wanted to build it with me, not alone. I told him soon. I told him this weekend. I told him I just needed to get through this one project at work. That Tuesday, I came home late. Patricia had already put the kids to bed, and on the kitchen table there was the model. Finished. Robert had built it alone because he'd finally stopped waiting. It was crooked. One wing sat lower than the other. He'd used too much glue, and there were these dried white smears across the fuselage, and it was the most careful, loving thing I'd ever seen. I stood at that kitchen table for a long time. Patricia came down and stood next to me, and neither of us said anything. And then I went to bed, because I had an early meeting. I have thought about that model more times than I can count. The thing I've come to understand, slowly, embarrassingly slowly, is that I was always waiting for life to slow down before I started living it. I thought there was a version of things coming, a calmer chapter, a time when work would ease up, when the pressure would lift, when I'd finally have enough in the bank to breathe properly. And once that happened, I told myself I'd be present. I'd be the father I meant to be, the husband, the friend. That chapter never came. Or rather, it came, but by the time it did, the people I'd meant to share it with had already arranged their lives around my absence. That's the part that took me the longest to see. It wasn't that they were angry with me. Robert and Diane, none of them hated me for it. That almost would have been easier. Instead, they just adapted. Children are extraordinary at adapting. They find other people to fill the spaces, other adults, other connections, other ways of getting what they needed. They didn't leave, they just quietly stopped expecting me to show up in certain ways, and I didn't notice until it was already settled into the architecture of our family, just the way things were. Patricia and I had 31 years before she passed, 2019, January. 31 years is a long time, long enough that I thought I knew everything about her, long enough that I got lazy about finding out if I actually did. After she died, I found journals, 6 of them, in a shoebox in the back of the closet. I don't know what I expected to find. I don't know why I even opened them. She had a whole interior life I never asked about. Not secrets, not anything that would make a good story. Just her. Her thoughts about books she was reading, her memories of her mother, small worries about Diane going through a hard year in her late 20s, observations about the neighborhood, the garden, a particular quality of light on winter afternoons that she kept returning to in different entries. She wrote beautifully. I never knew that. I read all 6 journals in one weekend. I couldn't stop. And somewhere in the middle of the 4th one, I put it down, and I just sat there, and I thought, I was married to this woman for 31 years, and I did not know her. I let myself not know her. That is something I have not found a way to put down. I'm going to stop here for a moment and pick this back up. My throat gets tired now. Things I didn't used to have to think about. But I want to keep going. There's more I want to say.
Where was I? Right. There was a man I worked with for almost 15 years, David Park. Brilliant man, meticulous, the kind of colleague who made you better just by being in the same room because you didn't want to bring half-finished thinking to someone who always showed up completely prepared. David and I were close in the way that work people become close. Lunch sometimes, long conversations in the parking garage after late nights. He had this dry humor that most people missed if they weren't paying attention. I paid attention. We both did, to each other. When I moved to a different firm in 1998, we said we'd keep in touch, and we meant it. We both meant it. I called him maybe twice in the first year. He called me once, and then the calls got further apart, and then they stopped, and years went by the way years do when you're too busy to notice them passing. I thought about him sometimes, not with any particular guilt at first, just, I should call David one of these days. You know how that thought lives in your mind without ever actually turning into a phone call. I found out through someone at my old firm that he died in 2015, heart attack. He was 61. I had not spoken to him in nearly 12 years. I don't even have a clean way to end that story. That's sort of the point. There's no ending to it. It just stops. My granddaughter, Emma, is 11 now, Diane's daughter. She looks like Diane looked at that age, which means she has Patricia's eyes. Something about that undoes me a little every time I see her. Emma is the one who figured out how to use this recording thing I'm using right now. She set it up for me last month when she was visiting. She thought I wanted to record family stories for the family, and I suppose in a way that's what I'm doing, though not in the way she meant. She's 11, and she already has more patience with me than I had with my own children when they were her age. I watch her sometimes, and I think, there it is, right there. Whatever it is I spent my whole life being too distracted to see. It was always that small and that close. I just kept waiting to have time for it.
My condition has a name, of course, multiple myeloma. I've had it for 2 years now. The doctors are not pessimistic exactly, but there's a particular way they phrase things that I have learned to listen to, the spaces between what they say. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I don't want sympathy. I'm telling you because it changed the texture of time for me, and I want to be honest about that, because everything I'm saying now is filtered through that change. When you have more time than you think you'll need, you spend it differently than when you start to see the edges of it. I wish I could say the urgency I feel now is something I manufactured on my own through wisdom, that at some point in my 50s or 60s I just understood how short it all was and started living accordingly. That would be a more flattering story. The truth is, it took a diagnosis. It took my doctor sitting across from me with her hands folded and choosing her words with great care. That's when the texture changed. I've been thinking about the word later a lot lately, how much I used it, how automatic it was. Later was always a real place to me, a place I was going, where there was...
I don't have a lesson to offer. I told you that at the start. What I have is this: a memory of cold water and good light, and the knowledge that there were hundreds of afternoons like that one that I spent somewhere else. Not somewhere important, just somewhere else. I had a good life. I want to be clear about that. I don't say these things from bitterness. Patricia and I loved each other in the ways we knew how to. My children are good people. I built something real. But there was a life inside the life I was living, a smaller, closer, quieter one, and I kept walking past the door. I don't know exactly what I would have done differently. I'm not even sure that's the right question anymore. Maybe the question is just whether you're walking past that door.
If any of this sat with you, if something here reminded you of something, I'd be glad to know. Not to talk about me, just to know you heard it. That's all I wanted. Thank you for sitting with me for a little while.